Have you ever been in this situation? You're watching an English movie and you understand almost everything. You nod along with the jokes, you follow the story perfectly, and you feel pretty confident about your English skills. But then someone asks you a question in English, and suddenly, your mind goes blank. The words you know so well disappear. You stumble, you hesitate, and you feel frustrated because you know you understand English, but speaking feels impossible. If this sounds familiar, you're definitely not alone. This is one of the most common problems English learners face, and today we're going to talk about why this happens, and more importantly, what you can do about it. First, let me tell you something that might make you feel better. This problem is completely normal. It's not a sign that you're bad at English or that you're not smart enough. In fact, understanding English but struggling to speak it is a natural part of the language learning process. Think of it like this. When you were a baby learning your first language, you understood your parents long before you could speak back to them. The same thing happens when you learn a second language. But why does this gap between understanding and speaking exist? Well, there are several reasons, and once you understand them, you'll be able to work on closing that gap. The first reason is that understanding and speaking use different parts of your brain. When you listen to English, your brain is in receive mode. You're taking in information, processing it, and connecting it to things you already know. It's like being a detective, you're gathering clues and putting together the meaning. But when you speak, your brain has to switch to create mode. Now you have to find the right words, put them in the correct order, think about grammar, pronunciation, and do it all quickly enough to keep the conversation going. That's a lot more work. Think about it like cooking. Reading a recipe and understanding it is one thing. Actually cooking the meal, remembering all the steps, timing everything perfectly, and making it taste good, that's much harder. The same principle applies to language learning. Another big reason is confidence. When you're listening, there's no pressure. Nobody knows if you misunderstood something. You can replay a video, ask someone to repeat, or just let the conversation continue and figure it out from context. But when you speak, suddenly everyone is listening to you. You feel exposed like you're on stage. What if you make a mistake? What if people don't understand you? What if you sound silly? This fear is so powerful that it can actually block the words from coming out, even when you know them perfectly. I've seen students who can write beautiful essays freeze up completely when asked to speak the same ideas out loud. It's not that they don't know the words, it's that fear is getting in the way. Let me share a story that perfectly illustrates this. I had a student named Maria who could understand complex English TV shows and movies without subtitles. She could read advanced books and understand everything. But in conversation, she would panic. One day, I asked her to tell me about her weekend, and she said, I went to, the place where you buy food. I knew she knew the word supermarket, but in that moment of pressure, it just wouldn't come out. The third reason is that most English learning focuses too much on input and not enough on output. In school, you probably spent most of your time reading, listening, and doing grammar exercises. These are all passive activities. They're important, but they don't train the muscles you need for speaking, literally and figuratively. When I say literally, I mean your mouth muscles. Speaking English requires your tongue, lips, and jaw to move in ways that might be different from your native language. If you don't practice these movements regularly, it feels awkward and uncomfortable when you try to speak. It's like going to the gym for the first time after months of not exercising. Your muscles need training. And figuratively means the mental muscles. The ability to quickly access vocabulary, form sentences, and express your thoughts in real time, these are skills that need practice. You can't develop them just by listening and reading. Here's another important point that many people don't realize. The English you hear in movies, podcasts, and conversations is usually much simpler than the English you need to produce when speaking. When native speakers talk, they use a lot of filler words like well, you know, and like. They repeat themselves, start sentences, change direction, and use very common, simple vocabulary most of the time. But when you try to speak, you might be reaching for complicated words and perfect grammar. You're trying to speak like a textbook instead of speaking like a real person. This makes speaking feel much harder than it needs to be. Let me give you an example. In real conversation, a native speaker might say, "So I went to this place, you know, the coffee shop on Main Street, and they had this new drink. I can't remember what it's called, but it was really good. Like super sweet, but not too sweet, you know what I mean?" But when English learners try to speak, they often aim for something like, "I visited the coffee establishment located on Main Street, where I consumed a new beverage which had an excellent flavor profile that was sweet but not excessively so." See the difference? The first version sounds natural and easy, even though it's not perfect. The second version is technically correct, but sounds stiff and requires much more mental effort to produce. Now, let's talk about what you can do to bridge this gap between understanding and speaking. The good news is that there are specific strategies that really work, and I've seen students transform their speaking ability using these methods. The first strategy is to start speaking to yourself. I know this might sound strange, but it's one of the most effective things you can do. When you're alone, describe what you're doing, what you see, or what you're thinking about. Don't worry about making mistakes. Nobody is listening. This helps you practice accessing vocabulary quickly and forming sentences without pressure. For example, if you're making breakfast, narrate the process. "I'm taking the eggs out of the refrigerator. Now I'm cracking them into the bowl. Oh, I need to add some milk. The pan is getting hot." This simple practice helps train your brain to think in English instead of translating from your native language. The second strategy is to practice with low-pressure speaking opportunities. Find situations where making mistakes doesn't matter. You can record voice messages on your phone and send them to yourself. You can join online language exchange groups where everyone is learning and making mistakes together. You can even practice speaking to your pet. They won't judge your grammar. The key is to speak regularly without the fear of judgment. Think of it like learning to ride a bicycle. You need to practice in a safe space where falling down doesn't hurt before you can ride confidently on busy streets. Third, focus on communication over perfection. Your goal should be to get your message across, not to speak perfectly. Native speakers make mistakes all the time. They say, they forget words, and they start sentences over. What matters is whether people understand what you're trying to say. I remember another student, Carlos, who was so worried about making grammar mistakes that he would spend 10 seconds thinking about each sentence before speaking. Conversations with him felt very unnatural and tiring. I told him to focus on speed over accuracy for a while. Yes, he made more grammar mistakes, but his communication became so much more natural and engaging that people actually understood him better, even with the mistakes. Fourth, build up your speaking stamina gradually. Just like physical exercise, you need to start small and build up. Don't expect to have a fluent 2-hour conversation right away. Start with 1-minute speaking exercises. Set a timer and talk about a simple topic for exactly 1 minute. Then gradually increase the time. You can talk about anything: your morning routine, your favorite food, a movie you watched, your plans for the weekend. The topic doesn't matter as much as the practice of speaking continuously without long pauses. Fifth, learn chunks and phrases, not just individual words. Native speakers don't build every sentence word by word. They use chunks of language that they've heard many times before. Instead of learning busy, very, and today as separate words, learn the chunk "I'm really busy today." Instead of learning individual words for expressing opinions, learn phrases like "I think that," "in my opinion," "it seems to me that." This approach makes speaking much faster and more natural because you're not constructing everything from scratch every time you speak. Here's a really practical tip that has helped many of my students. Keep a speaking journal. Every day, spend 5 to 10 minutes speaking about your day into your phone's voice recorder. Don't write it first, just speak. Talk about what you did, how you felt, what you learned, and what you're planning for tomorrow. At first, this might feel really difficult. You might have long pauses, you might repeat yourself, and that's totally okay. The goal is to build the habit and train your brain to organize thoughts in English in real time. After doing this for a few weeks, you'll notice that the words start coming more easily. Another powerful technique is shadowing. This means listening to English audio and trying to speak along at the same time. You can do this with podcasts, YouTube videos, or audiobooks. Don't worry about understanding every word. Just focus on matching the rhythm, intonation, and sounds. This helps train your mouth muscles and improves your pronunciation while also helping you internalize natural English patterns. Let's talk about dealing with that fear and nervousness that stops many people from speaking. First, remember that most people are much more focused on what they want to say than on judging your English. Think about when someone speaks to you in your native language with an accent or makes small mistakes. Do you sit there criticizing them? Probably not. You're usually just trying to understand their message and respond appropriately. Also, reframe mistakes as learning opportunities rather than failures. Every mistake teaches you something. When you make an error and someone corrects you or doesn't understand, you've just identified something specific to work on. That's actually more useful than speaking perfectly, because perfect speech doesn't show you where your weak spots are. I encourage my students to celebrate their mistakes. When they catch themselves making an error or when someone corrects them, I want them to think, "Great, now I know exactly what to practice." This mindset shift can completely change how you feel about speaking. Another important point is to start with topics you know well and care about. It's much easier to speak about your family, your job, your hobbies, or your hometown than to discuss abstract philosophical concepts. When you're passionate about a topic and know it well, the words come more naturally because you're focused on sharing your ideas rather than searching for vocabulary. I had a student who struggled with speaking until we started talking about cooking. She was a fantastic cook and loved sharing recipes. Suddenly, she was speaking fluently about ingredients, techniques, and flavors. Her confidence in that area helped her relax, and that relaxation spread to other topics. Practice describing things you can see. This is a great exercise because you don't have to remember information or think of creative ideas. Just look around and describe what you see. There's a red car parked outside my window. The driver is getting out. She's wearing a blue jacket and carrying a brown bag. This helps you practice forming sentences quickly and accessing basic vocabulary. Let's address a common misconception. Many people think they need to build up a huge vocabulary before they can start speaking. This isn't true. You can communicate a lot with a relatively small vocabulary if you know how to use those words flexibly. Native speakers use approximately 2,000 to 3,000 words in daily conversation, even though they might know 20,000 or more words. Focus on learning the most common words really well instead of learning many words superficially. Learn different ways to use common words like get, make, do, have, and go. These verbs appear in hundreds of different expressions and can help you say many different things. For example, with just the word get, you can say, get up, wake up, get home, arrive home, get it, understand, get angry, become angry, get better, improve, and many more. Learning these combinations is more useful for speaking than learning rare vocabulary words you might never use. Another helpful strategy is to prepare for common conversation topics. Think about questions people often ask when they first meet you. Where are you from? What do you do for work? What are your hobbies? Do you have family? What do you like about your city? Practice answering these questions out loud until you can do it smoothly. Don't memorize scripts, but have some key phrases and ideas ready. This preparation gives you confidence because you know you can handle these common topics well. Also, learn how to buy yourself time while speaking. Native speakers do this all the time with phrases like, "Let me think about that." "That's a good question." "Well, you know." Or, "How can I put this?" These phrases give your brain a moment to organize your thoughts without creating awkward silence. One thing that really helps is recording yourself having conversations with imaginary people. I know this sounds silly, but it's incredibly effective. Imagine you're at a job interview, ordering food at a restaurant, asking for directions, or explaining a problem to a friend. Practice both sides of the conversation. You can even watch English conversations in movies or TV shows, pause after one person speaks, and try to respond as if you were the other person. This helps you practice thinking on your feet and responding naturally to different types of statements and questions. Let's talk about pronunciation worries. Many students avoid speaking because they're self-conscious about their accent. Here's the truth. Having an accent is completely normal and okay. Most successful English speakers around the world have accents. What matters is being clear and understandable, not sounding like a native speaker. Focus on pronouncing sounds clearly rather than trying to eliminate your accent completely. Work on sounds that might cause confusion. For example, if people often don't understand you when you say certain words, practice those specific sounds rather than trying to change your entire accent. Remember, communication is the goal, not perfection. If people can understand your main message, your pronunciation is good enough. You can always continue to improve, but don't let pronunciation fears stop you from speaking. Here's something that might surprise you. The more you speak, the better your listening comprehension becomes too. When you practice speaking, you're also practicing the rhythm and patterns of English. This actually helps you understand native speakers better because you're more familiar with how English sounds and flows. It's like learning to dance. When you practice the steps yourself, you can better appreciate and follow the dance when you watch others do it. Speaking and listening skills support each other in ways that many people don't realize. Let me share one more story that I think will inspire you. I had a student named Ahmed who was terrified of speaking English. He understood everything in his advanced engineering courses, but he wouldn't participate in discussions. He was so worried about making mistakes that he preferred to stay silent. One day, there was an emergency at his workplace, and he was the only person who knew how to fix a critical problem. He had to explain the solution in English to a team of international colleagues. In that moment, his focus shifted from "how do I sound" to "how do I save the project?" He spoke for 20 minutes, explaining complex technical processes, and everyone understood perfectly. After that day, his speaking confidence completely changed. He realized that when he focused on his message rather than his mistakes, he could communicate effectively. The knowledge was always there. He just needed to get out of his own way. This brings me to a crucial point. Often, the biggest barrier to speaking isn't lack of knowledge or skill, it's mental. We create stories in our heads about how terrible our English is, how people will judge us, or how we're not ready yet. These stories become self-fulfilling prophecies. Try to notice when you're telling yourself these negative stories and consciously choose different thoughts. Instead of "my English is terrible," try "I'm still learning, and that's okay." Instead of "everyone will laugh at my mistakes," try "most people are understanding and helpful." Instead of "I'm not ready to speak yet," try "the best way to get ready is to practice." Your mindset has a huge impact on your speaking ability. Students with positive, growth-oriented mindsets improve much faster than those who focus on their limitations and fears. Here's a practical exercise you can start today. Choose a topic you're comfortable with, something you could easily discuss in your native language. Set a timer for 2 minutes and speak about that topic in English. Don't worry about grammar, vocabulary, or pronunciation. Just focus on expressing your thoughts. When the timer goes off, don't analyze or criticize what you said. Just acknowledge that you completed the exercise. Do this every day for a week with different topics. You'll be amazed at how much easier it becomes and how much more naturally the words start to flow. Another effective technique is to practice thinking in English throughout your day. When you're walking, instead of thinking in your native language, try to think in English. Describe what you see, plan your day, or reflect on your experiences using English in your mind. This helps make English feel more natural and automatic. When English becomes the language of your internal dialogue, speaking it externally becomes much easier. Remember that fluency doesn't mean speaking fast or using complex words. Fluency means being able to express your thoughts smoothly and naturally, even if you speak slowly or use simple vocabulary. Some of the most effective communicators I know speak quite slowly and use very straightforward language. Focus on being clear, not impressive. Focus on connecting with people, not showing off your vocabulary. Focus on sharing your ideas, not proving how perfect your grammar is. One last piece of advice that I want to leave you with. Be patient and kind to yourself. Learning to speak a language is like learning to play a musical instrument. You wouldn't expect to play beautiful music after just a few lessons, and you shouldn't expect to speak perfectly after studying English for a short time. Every time you practice speaking, even if it feels difficult or frustrating, you're making progress. You're training your brain, exercising your mouth muscles, and building confidence. Some days will feel better than others, and that's completely normal. The students who succeed are not necessarily the ones who are naturally gifted or who learn the fastest. They're the ones who keep practicing consistently, who view mistakes as learning opportunities, and who focus on progress rather than perfection. You already have the foundation. You can understand English, which means your brain has already done a lot of the hard work. Now it's just a matter of building on that foundation with speaking practice, patience, and self-compassion. Start small, be consistent, and remember that every English conversation you have, every speaking exercise you complete, and every mistake you make is bringing you closer to the fluent speaker you want to become. The gap between understanding and speaking is real, but it's not permanent. With the right approach and regular practice, you can close that gap and become the confident English speaker you know you can be. You've got this.